The problem is that most people think that becoming a man and a woman is just a matter of an X or a Y. But the truth of the matter is, it's way more complex than that. It's so easy to understand that someone can be born with a heart that is structurally different or can be born with an absent kidney. But somehow we seem to have a difficulty in understanding that people can be born with variations of sexual differentiation. So, what in the Imane Khelif was going on in the Olympic boxing world? So, the Olympics may be over, but you guys, we still have lots to talk about. Let's just start with even the fact that most people don't know that men and women actually begin looking exactly the same, embryonically speaking. If you thought an XY is all you needed to become male or female, or was confused about the Olympic controversy, or just want an understanding of gender diversity so you can love others better, then this episode is for you. We thank you for watching, and don't forget to click subscribe. So you guys, clearly there's lots that the public doesn't know that the scientific world has known for many, many years. And perhaps the issue with Imane Khelif and the question about her gender and subsequently her eligibility to compete in boxing as a woman may not have been so controversial had we all had some basic understandings of our own biology. Now, granted, this is not your typical sex ed class. This is way beyond the sex ed class education. However, there are some basic things that we should be aware of when we talk about gender differentiation or sex differentiation, scientifically speaking. Now, there was lots of confusion. If you're not aware of the controversy, I'm not going to focus so much on the controversy, but the topic that the controversy kind of illuminated, right? So there's lots of questions, and it's okay that we're still kind of exploring and try to understand the vocabulary of defining the variation of who we are as people, as human beings. And that's okay. That alone will have its own evolution process as we gain understanding of our own biology. And the problem is that most people think that becoming a man and a woman is just a matter of an X or a Y, and that's it. Well, the truth of the matter is, it's way more complex than that. For example, we go from having a chromosome that is supposed to end up defining you as a man or a woman, and it doesn't because there's some step in between that takes an alternate pathway. So, for example, we start off with chromosomes, and then from our chromosomes, we develop gonads. When we talk about gonads, we're talking about ovaries or testes. And then from the ovaries and testes, we get hormones that are produced that ultimately help to differentiate our external genitalia, right? So, what makes us phenotypically look like men or women depends on what hormones are not only being produced, but are they being produced in adequate amount? And then when they are produced and they are in adequate amount, are the tissue responding to them? So let's go all the way back before we get to that endpoint. So if we start from the very beginning of embryology, at about the fourth week is really when the cascade of processes start to take place that would end up making us male or females. And we're talking specifically cis male or cis female. This is what got everyone confused because they figured everyone who has an X or a Y as that defining chromosome has to be a male or a female, right? Not exactly, because there are people who have the chromosomes, but somewhere along the process, they don't produce the hormones that are necessary to make them look like male or look like female. And to make things even more complicated, let's start with the genetics of it all. So typically, we're supposed to have in our gonads 23 chromosomes. This is not a shout out to 23andMe, but I'm just saying our gonads are supposed to have our 23 chromosomes with a sex chromosome. In women, it's always going to be a X. The gonads can produce sperm that will carry either an X or a Y in general, but as we all know, in genetics, Everything's never 100%. And so sometimes you will have a sperm that may be carrying still an extra X or have an S or a Y gene on that Y chromosome that is dysfunctional in some way. It either may be damaged or it may not be translating very well to create the proteins that are necessary to carry the information to then become and develop into testes. But there are so many things, as we have all learned now. I think most of us have a basic understanding of genetics to the point where we know that genes mutate, right? And we do know that genes sometimes may become dysfunctional. And also, we're now gaining knowledge and understanding as a general public, because the scientific world knows this, that sometimes when we come together as genes and divide, things don't always divide the way they supposed to. And so sometimes you have an X and a Y that comes together, and then they're supposed to divide. And when they divide, the chromosomes are supposed to separate in a particular way. And sometimes you don't have chromosomes that are separating normally. They stay attached, or a portion of them stay attached. And so in that first 6 to 8 week of life, we have what's called bipotential gonads. That's a fancy way of saying there is gonadal cells that have the potential to become either a male or a female, ultimately. And so what determines this? Well, what determines this is the presence of the Y chromosome. So if you have a Y chromosome, you will, in general, idealistically speaking, have an SRY gene. An SRY gene or region on that Y chromosome is what determines the production of a testes. So testes determining factor. And once you have that testes determining factor, you will ultimately develop testes. And within those testes, you have Leydig or Sertoli cells that then produce hormones. And the production of those hormones will either lead to the formation of what phenotypically looks like a guy, so scrotum, a penis, the more mature testes, and also the descent of the testes. In the absence of the SRY, testes determinant factor, you will develop what's called the female gonads, which are the ovaries. Unlike the testes, the ovaries do not produce testosterone and do not produce the anti-Mullerian hormone, Mullerian inhibitory hormone, Mullerian inhibitory factor, whatever you call it. And that hormone is what is responsible for the regression of what would ultimately become the female genitalia. So let's recap this. If you have the Y chromosome and you have the functioning aspect of the or functioning region of the Y chromosome called the SRY, you will then develop testes. If you don't have it, you will develop ovaries. If you develop testes, you will then develop testosterone and MIH or Mullerian inhibitory hormone. It has various names, but ultimately a hormone that then inhibit the formation of female. If you have testosterone being adequately produced from the same testes, you will then develop male genitalia. I'm simplifying this process. It is way more complicated than this, but this is just to give you an idea of how intricate the process is in sex differentiation. And so here are some areas that you may have alternate pathways. One way that you can have an alternate pathway is that you may have a sperm that comes but has an X and a Y, and the presence of an extra X can then inhibit the formation or alter in some ways the formation of the male genitalia. You may have the Y and the X come together, but then during their replication process, you have some type of alternate pathway that happens that results in an extra chromosome or extra part of a chromosome. So many things can happen during that process. Another pathway that may affect the outcome of someone being phenotypically male or female is the production of steroids. So the hormones, estrogen and testosterone, are steroid hormones. If there is an alternate pathway in the production of steroids, then you won't produce normal testosterone or perhaps a lower concentration of testosterone and estrogen similarly. So are you guys getting an extra special level of gratitude that we all are developed in the way that we are developed. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the individuals who have these dysfunctions. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that because they have to endure other issues that are then linked to these chromosomal or genetic or developmental pathways, alternate pathways, they endure a life that's way more complicated for physiological reasons, for psychological reasons, for societal reasons, as we have just recognized as a result of this debacle in the Olympics. Okay. So getting back to where we were. So you can have genetic issues in terms of how the genes come together, are multiplied to then result in what should be production of the proteins and the process that then leads to the formation of what the Y and the X chromosomes were intended to produce. If that makes sense. No disrespect with the word intended. Let's go back. So you can have, first off, genetic issues. So just the way the chromosomes come together, the way they replicate, can lead to a multitude of alternate pathways, which can lead to variations of the production of male and female genders. In addition to that, you can also have hormonal issues. So you can have too little hormone produced, too much hormones produced, other potent hormones produced, that then leads to the virilization of someone that was genetically intended to be a female, but because of the potent androgenic hormones, they look different. It's a whole lot, y'all. And then in addition to that, you can have the production of the hormone in the right quantity and the right hormone produced, but then you can have a problem at the endpoint where the receptor, which is the protein on the cell membrane that receives that hormone, may not fit correctly or just may not translate correctly. And so you have an individual who has a particular genetics that produced the correct hormones that then encountered a block. And so physically looking at them, they don't look like what you expect them to look like because of that receptor issue. Are y'all following me so far? I hope you are. So we just wanted to just open the minds of individuals so that you know that having an X and a Y doesn't guarantee that you're going to look like an X intended to look like, i.e. female, or look like this Y intended to look like, meaning male. There are variations, and there are individuals who are living, for example, with an XXY chromosome genetics, and those are our Klinefelter syndrome individuals. Shout out to y'all. Hey, what's up, y'all? Which is the most common type of male chromosomal disorder that exists. It's the most common, and it's sadly one of the most underdiagnosed because individuals with Klinefelters have a multitude of other issues that they have to deal with, from intellectual issues to a higher rate of metabolic syndrome, higher rate of autoimmune diseases. They have gynecomastia, so they have developed breasts that would similarly look like female breasts. And so they have a number of things that they have to deal with. But unfortunately, because of the societal pressures often, and just a general lack of awareness, they don't get diagnosed and they don't get the help that they need. So you guys, there's an effort today to make sure that people don't feel odd or ostracized or some weird exception, but that they too have a place in society and should be loved just like anyone else. And so before, you may have heard terms like hermaphrodite or intersex or ambiguous genitalia, but ultimately it was determined to call these disorders of sexual development, to kind of group together this category of medical issues, which is very different from someone's sexual identity or determination to become transgender, which is they have a cisgender and have decided or feel like they are actually the opposite gender. And so, with individuals who are within the category of disorders of sexual development, you may have individuals who have absence of their genitalia at birth. You may have individuals who have genitalia that are not classically identifiable as male or female. You may have hypospadias or a very small male genitalia. You may also have undescended testes. So, you have a number of disorders that fit in the category of disorders of sexual development. Also, I want to mention that because male and female develop from the same ducts. So there are two ducts that are present, and those ducts have the potential to form male or female. And what that means is they still have the same genetic or embryological basis for what becomes a female genitalia and what becomes a male genitalia. And this is why the male's penis and the woman's clitoris are embryologically from the same embryological origin. And so we're not as different as we think we are. That being said, it's really important to make room for individuals whose biological process took alternate pathways. It's also important for us to distinguish what disorders of sexual development are from the LGBTQ plus community. It is not the same, and there may be overlapping in all communities. So let's make room for these individuals. Let's spread love and not hate, and let's be open to understanding individuals who are different from us. Had that not happened, then Imane Khelif would not have become an Olympic gold winner. You heard that, an Olympic gold winner, but also the first Algerian, also the first African, also the first Arab to win an Olympic gold medal in the boxing category. And for those who are geographically informed or multiculturally informed, now you know there is no way Algeria was going to send a transgender to the Olympics. So thank you guys for joining. I hope I opened your understanding of not just the biology of what leads to a male and a female, but also just the acceptance of people who are different from us. We have such a lacking of that in the world. So I hope I've opened your mind to understanding and acceptance of individuals who are biologically different, just like we have biological differences in any other organ system in the body. So that being said, this is Dr. T, the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club right here on YouTube, and also the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club on Instagram. And now you can see us on fan base. So we hope to see you there also. Thank you for joining us and continue to comment, like, and share. We appreciate the feedbacks and the critiques. We take it all in love and in stride. We thank you for joining us, and we see you guys when the next episode. And